So I recently came across an Only Sky article that discusses the supposed continuing decline of Christianity in the US. But instead of just reading the article for you guys, I'm going to jump to some of the sources it cites. So, firstly, we have a study from the Pew Research Center, and it's dated September of last year, which makes it sound like it's a long time ago until you remember that we're still only in January and September was only, several months ago. And so it's entitled Modeling the Future of Religion in America. And the subheading reads If recent trends in religious switching continue, Christians could make up less than half of the U.S. population within a few decades. Since the 1990s, large numbers of Americans have left Christianity to join the growing ranks of U.S. adults who describe their religious identity as atheist, agnostic, or quote unquote, nothing in particular. This accelerating trend is reshaping the U.S. religious landscape, leading many people to wonder what the future of religion in America might look like. What if Christians keep leaving religion at the same rate observed in recent years? What if the pace of religious switching continues to accelerate? This is a lot of questions. What if switching were to stop, but other demographic trends, such as migration, births, and deaths, were to continue at current rates? To help answer such questions, Pew Research Center has modeled several hypothetical scenarios describing how the U.S. religious landscape might change over the next half century. The center estimates that in 2020, about 64% of Americans, including children, were Christian. People who are religiously unaffiliated, sometimes called religious nuns, and of course that's N-O-N-E-S, not N-U-N, accounted for 30% of the U.S. population. Adherents of all other religions, including Jews, Muslims, Hindus, and Buddhists, totaled about 6%. Depending on whether religious switching continues at recent rates, speeds up, or stops entirely, the projections show Christians of all ages shrinking from 64% to between a little more than half, 54%, and just above one-third, 35%, of all Americans by 2070. Over the same period, quote-unquote nuns would rise from the current 30% to somewhere between 34 and 52% of the U.S. population. 2070, I wonder if I'll still be around. Maybe if I keep taking my resveratrol and anti-aging supplements. Yeah, wow. I think that projection makes sense. So depending on which hypothetical model or trend you're going with, it could be anywhere from 54% to just above one-third. And yeah, if you take into consideration factors like this has traditionally been a predominantly Christian nation, but people tend to be moving away from religion or Christianity. And then with immigration trends, you have other faiths kind of being incorporated or integrated into the population at large, added into the melting pot, so to speak. It makes sense that Christianity, the percentage of active or self-identifying Christians could fall that low by that point. Could very well be a good thing as long as people are moving away from a spirit of superstition and religious intolerance and towards a kind of spirit of humanism and secularism in the best possible sense of the word. Let's move towards that Star Trek-esque utopia that I've often mentioned on the show, at least in the early days. I've kind of lost some of my faith in humanity along the way, but I'm still hoping. And then that Only Sky article also mentions a website or some kind of think tank or organization called the State of Theology, and it's actually a Christian organization that does polls or studies. And so I go to their page and it says, what do Americans believe about God, salvation, ethics, and the Bible? Legionnaire, I think it is, Ministries and Lifeway Research partnered to find out. Every 2 years, we take the theological temperature of the United States to help Christians better understand today's culture and to equip the church with better insights for discipleship. Read some of our key findings from 2022 below and explore the data for yourself. And this first one just really tickles me for some reason. And it's entitled, Does God Change? Did I say like really East Coast accent? God. Does God change? As we look at ourselves and at the world, it is clear that human beings, along with the rest of creation, undergo frequent changes. But does this principle of change apply to God as well? The Bible affirms the truth that the triune God is both omniscient, meaning that he knows all things, and immutable, meaning that he cannot and does not change. Despite this truth, the majority of adults in the United States believe that God both learns and adapts to different circumstances. And for some reason, that just makes me picture God like some kind of test subject, like a chimp with a wired helmet and playing with blocks. God adapts, God both learns and adapts to different circumstances. Despite the clear teaching of Scripture, this year's survey reveals that approximately half of evangelicals believe that God learns and adapts to various situations, meaning that they believe that God does change. Yeah, and I'm not even a believer, but that seems weird to me. But maybe it's for the best because maybe they believe that God, changes and softens on some of the uglier bits of the Bible, like the killing of homosexuals and that kind of thing. Then there's another section, the Bible. U.S. adults increasingly reject the divine authorship of the Bible, relegating it to the same category as other religious writings in purportedly sacred texts. Yeah, which is right. I don't think the Bible has any more validity than the Bhagavad Gita or various Buddhist sacred texts or anything else. They're all man made, and the Bible is a cobbled together anthology of different books by different authors with redundant stories at points and contradictions, etc. This view makes it easy for individuals to accept biblical teaching that they resonate with, while simultaneously rejecting any biblical teaching that is out of step with their own personal views or broader cultural values. Yeah, I think that probably describes most moderate Christians, that it's that kind of cafeteria Catholic approach, which is kind of, hypocritical or intellectually dishonest in a way, I think. But I'd rather have people taking that moderate approach than believing in the entire Bible, literally, including those ugly bits I mentioned where it talks about things like killing homosexuals, men lying with other men, or killing adulterers, or, killing people for picking up sticks on the Sabbath or whatever it is.